Good afternoon, everybody. Wonderful to see so many of you here. I'm sure this is going to be a great session. My name is Suzi Feay. I teach here at Brunel. I'm a literary journalist and I teach in the creative writing school. I don't actually do any of the creative writing. I teach journalism, but I've been a literary critic for a long time. I was literary editor of The Independent on Sunday. And I specialise in novels to the extent of reading about 50 of them a year. No exaggeration, because I'm also involved in various literary prizes. And a lot of this reading is obviously, I have to get through this book somehow by hook or by crook.
None taken.
Every so often, there is something that I stay up late reading, or I just have a mammoth reading session because I just can't leave it and go to bed. And this is what happened with Nina Is Not Okay, Shappi's debut novel, not debut book, but debut novel. And I think it's really an extraordinary piece of work. And I did sob a bit, actually, at one point. There are very kind of sad moments, but Shappi, as many of you will know, is a stand-up comedian. And I think my first question really is going to be that I sort of thought it would be laugh-a-minute stuff, and there's definitely humour in there, and the voice has its humorous moments, but I was quite surprised at how dark the book is. So did you want to write a dark book? Particularly, how did it come about?
I was quite surprised as well, actually. I completely separate what I do as a stand-up as what I did as a writer of this book. I didn't. By the way, thank you for coming, everyone. Hello. And I have to say, it's I feel a little bit out of my comfort zone because I'm used to doing stand-up comedy, and sitting down is a bit odd. I don't know what to do with my legs. I'll put them over here.
You might get heckled. You're
Over
allowed
here.
to heckle.
They seem like a vicious, heckly kind of crowd, actually. I wanted to tell a particular story, and I think this story isn't one that I could jazz hands my way through, and I didn't chase the laughs, but I like to think my characters are witty. I like to think that Nina and her friend, especially Beth, are kind of witty. So that came out of it. But it's sad. There's a lot of sadness to it. So and a lot of it was percolating in my mind or wherever else it is that your writing comes from for a long time. And so it seemed like the most natural story for me to write. In that way, it wasn't an effort. The subject matter wasn't an effort.
Do you think that there is a kind of link between writing as a comedian, writing scripts, and writing a book like this? I was just thinking about Stuart Lee's book, which actually is almost a writing manual. He's written a book about comedy that was recommended to me by a writer, saying this guy, you know, he could teach anybody how to write.
He writes about writing,
Absolutely brilliantly. Did you feel that there were, there's a skill set that you can take over, as it were?
Yes, I thought that deeply about it. The answer is, I don't know. This is going to sound a lot more pretentious than I mean it to be, but I love this Fellini quote that I heard recently. Don't tell me what I do, I don't want to know. I'm very blinkered in what I do. All I know is what I want the end result to be, and I describe it as my own little yellow brick road, which kind of connects a bit with my character Nina's feeling of being a werewolf. Like, you just become what you want to, where your destination is somewhere that you're taken rather than somewhere that you go, right, from now I'm going to go down here. For me, it's like that. And with stand-up, I write stand-up by being out, by being in the hub of things, by being in amongst it. And with writing is such an isolating experience that I don't know. Maybe when I write more books, I'll see more of a connection, but I found them to be completely different journeys for me. Stand-up is instant gratification, or instant tragedy. No, I'm not building up my part here. There's like real highs and lows to stand-up. And stand-up, my character's an addict. Nina's an addict. And I believe, and a lot of stand-ups, I'm not talking for them, but I think stand-up is a disease. I think it's an addiction. I think it's a compulsion. I don't know a stand-up who isn't a compulsive in some way, if not an out-and-out addict. But whereas writing came from a different place. Creative writing came from 10-year-old me, came from every party, every conversation, everything, every feeling I've ever had in my life. Like there were things I drew upon writing this book that I forgot had happened, people I forgot existed, kind of revisited me, and I had that journey by myself. So that happens to an extent in stand-up, but because stand-up, you need it to be immediate. And people can't go back over it. You know, you don't, I mean, I reread a lot. I go back pages and forwards and stuff. You can't do that with stand-up. So they are very different places that the work comes from, for me.
It's called Nina is Not Okay, and throughout the course of the book, various people say, Nina, are you okay? And she says, yes, I'm fine. But she obviously isn't fine. The whole drama of the novel. We're not going to have any spoilers either, because part of the reason that I kept up late reading it was because I wanted to know what happened next. Perhaps you can tell us a little bit more about Nina, your protagonist.
Okay, well, we meet Nina when she's 17, and she has her 18th birthday quite quickly in the book. And Nina's father died when she was very young of alcoholism, and her mother remarries an Alan. And she has this brilliantly rambunctious, great fun, inconsistent father to having this stepdad who has buttered potatoes and goes to bed at 9:30 every night. And so she feels disconnected from her mum and her new family, although she loves her little sister Katie dearly. And she becomes heartbroken, and she falls into a terrible state of alcoholism herself. She's eaten alive by booze. And she has a horrific experience quite early on. The book starts with her being thrown out of a nightclub. And then throughout the book, she pieces together what actually happened that night. And she descends into, oh, Baba, you're too little for my book. Oh, that's a beautiful age, isn't it? That sort of toddler age, you can take them to something where someone might say a swear word, but in a few years' time might be more problematic. I hope you like my book, little one. You might be my pension. I can't remember what I was saying, but she goes through a period of promiscuity and doing things, going into situations that harm her, almost knowingly, because being harmed is a feeling that is familiar to her, even though it's horrible. And I think that's quite... If you are an addict, or you know addicts, or have tried to understand addicts, that's quite a common thing for addicts to do. Something feels bad, but it feels familiar, and so you keep going back to it. So she does that.
There is quite a bit about addiction in the book, and there's a comment in it that addiction is a disease. How much of the kind of scientific background did you look about? Like, what are the current theories and thoughts about addiction, because in some ways, you know, the reader could be thinking, you know, don't be an idiot, don't do that again, you fool. You know, it's a moral failing rather than a disease. So where are we in our thoughts?
That's a really interesting question. I mean, I did spend some time in a rehab centre, and I did draw a lot of experience from my own life. But for me, for life generally, and massively for my book, I feel that it's important that it's not an addict's job or position to try and explain addiction to someone who doesn't want to understand it. I think that sometimes you have to understand that you don't understand something, and that's where my character is, and the people around her struggle with that. I didn't write it as a book to spark a conversation about addiction itself, because for me it's all set. It is what it is in this book, and
there's another thread in the book that becomes very important as it goes on.
You know, I've Googled reviews. I'm only human, and I came across a couple who are very angry with my character. How can someone put their family through this? And I think, oh wow, that's what addicts come across from their own family, isn't it? A lot of the time, how could you do this to us? If only you could see yourself as we see you. And that's why I describe, or she describes herself as a werewolf, because for me, I don't know if you've ever seen American Werewolf in London, or pretty much any werewolf film, but that's how I describe addiction. I used to describe it to people who asked. It's like, you know, you see the hairs sprouting on your hand, and you know something terrible's happening to you, and your hands get longer and the claws come, and you're terrified, but you're in a tunnel and you can't stop it, and then you're the werewolf, and then there's no going back, and then you destruct and you cause mayhem and you hurt people, and then you wake up naked in the zoo, or whatever else you get up to on a Saturday night. But and then you go, oh, sorry, but that wasn't me. Sorry, but that wasn't me. And everyone's like, well, it looked a lot like you, and it was you, and take responsibility for your actions. And that's where the anger comes, and then learning that the people that you're hurting can't be the people that then, you know, give you TLC. That's a hard lesson to learn as an addict, I think, and that's something I think Nina struggles with.
It's a tough start to the book because of all of this and the werewolf stuff. Did you ever think that maybe she's not likeable enough, or maybe I should do something to sort of help readers over the hurdle, if you like? Because I just hear so much from publishers about, you know, when they turn books down, they say things like, this person isn't particularly likeable, so why would we care what happens to them? Was that sort of going through your mind at all when you wrote?
Yes, definitely, because I needed to like her. I needed to like her, I needed to love her, I needed to care for her, I needed her to matter to me. Also, I needed to make her not completely off the rails. You know, she does have fun, she does have friends, she's a good friend, she's a very compassionate person, and she's got a wonderful relationship with her little sister. I think her little sister often is the only person in the world who makes sense to her. As I wrote this, I did have a couple of trusted people to read it through with me, to let me know that we were hanging in with Nina. I think you need to hang in with her. So that was something I was conscious of, because it's, otherwise why would you go on a journey of mayhem if you don't give a monkeys about the person? It's important to...
We're on the roller coaster with her, I think, you know, sort of charging down into terrifying lows and then going up a little bit higher again. The other thing about her is she is a teenager, so how did you get the teenage voice? I mean, again, did your panel include teenagers? There's a quote in the back about somebody who said to you, yeah, we don't say that anymore.
Yeah, I had, because I wanted to keep the language current. Like, for example, there's, references to drugs that change every 5 years, or the idea. I didn't know if young people still say we're going out on the pool. I don't know. And so I did have a couple of young comics, Tom Lucy and Elliot Steele, who were like, do people still say whitey? Do people like, yeah, no, I don't know, what the hell's that? Like, if I say I can't go out and wash my hair, is that still a metaphor for I can't be bothered? Not really. So I did have that. But I don't know if this is to my shame or to my delight, but I found writing a teenager really easy and really natural, and that's perhaps some kind of arrested development. I feel extremely connected to my own youth. I don't think I'm any different to who I was when I was 15. I can carry myself with more confidence. I'm perhaps more articulate, and I can fake confidence better. But I don't think any of us really change from the person we are when we're 16, 17. And that was easy. And I remember that period of my life was so difficult that I stayed there in so many ways. So it was very, not easy isn't the right word. I didn't think about it. It was very natural. I don't know, I'm going to find it hard to write a novel that isn't a teenager. Perhaps some cognitive behavioural therapy might help with that. But I found that really fun. And also, when you're really old, when you start saying things like, I just like young people. I find talking to young people and writing about young people, and really not for young people. This has been described by some as a young adult book.
Yeah, I wondered about that.
Do you know, I hadn't even come across the term before. I wrote this thinking that people like me, 90s drunks, would relate to it. I grew up in the binge drinking generation, where the whole ladette culture, where feminism was matching the boys pint for pint, and not really being able to say, I'd rather not have one night stands if that's all right, because they make me feel empty inside. So I kind of, but it's been picked up and carried as a young adult's book because she's young, and that's great, I think. But you can, at 17, 18, we're regarded as adults, aren't we? At 18, and there is so much you still need, so much support you still need. You're still learning how to be comfortable in your own skin, and yet you have massive decisions to make. You're told, oh, don't settle down with someone when you're so young, but you fall in love like all the films and all the storybooks, and that heartbreak is real, and somehow people don't take heartbreak in an 18-year-old as serious as someone, that's going through a divorce in their 30s. And I think a lot of the time, young people's feelings are dismissed because you've got youth on your side. What more do you want? Like as though you've pulled your youth out of a hat. As though you've won it somehow in a lottery. So I enjoy writing young characters.
Would you like to read us a bit from the book now? I think we could all do with hearing Nina's voice at this point.
Why, yes, I would. Thank you for asking. All right, so I'm not giving away any spoilers. It happens very early on in the book. Nina is thrown out of a nightclub for performing a lewd act on a guy who follows her out with his friend. And she doesn't remember from when he and his mate walked her away from the club to when they put her in a taxi sometime afterwards. And she's got that terrifying hungover paranoia that I'm sure all of you, if not some of you, have had when you've been so drunk and you've blacked out and you're terrified that the whole world is talking about it, and you're going to turn the news on and they're going to be talking about what you did. There are no big banners around the canteen announcing what I got up to on Saturday night, a relief. Beth says, all of this is a feminist issue and I'm not to feel any shame at all. And why the Are there any children in the room? And why the fuck should you? She was right on a high horse last night when she came round too. There was 2 of you in this, the sucker and the sucky. Notice that you got chucked out of the club, not him. Textbook misogyny. She went on and on about the slut-shaming bouncer needing to be sacked. He threw you out. You are drunk and alone. Seriously, we should write and complain. Yeah, right. Dear Sir or Madam, I'm writing to complain about my treatment by your staff on Saturday night. At approximately 11:20 p.m, I gave a young man I just met a blowjob by the downstairs bar. One of your bouncers, I'm afraid I cannot describe him, my vision was blurred, dragged me out, threw me onto the street without giving me a chance to call my mum, tell my friends, or finish the blowjob. I feel this action was discriminatory, as the bloke I was noshing off, I'm afraid I did not catch his name, was not asked to leave. Yours sincerely, Nina Swanson. No, I did not feel like complaining. I felt like having another shower and scrubbing my skin with a Brillo pad. So
She has a sense of humour.
Nina, and like I quite enjoy.
Can I read you this bit purely for my own enjoyment?
She's got a big crush on her English teacher,
Isabel Cristofori. And I think we've all got this one teacher who believed in us, and mine was one, my A-level English teacher was the first human being that went, oh, you can write, and I'll never forget it. And I, just a mere 35 years later, I wrote a book. I can't do maths, can you tell? Never mind. So she goes in and she's really hungover. Nina, Isabel Cristofori, my English teacher, gently puts her hand on my arm as everyone leaves. I'm wearing a vest top. My skin is bare. Her fingers are warm and impossibly soft. She smells like she's just stepped out of a bath with loads of nice products in it. I don't smell like that even when I have stepped out of a bath like that. She's sexy as hell, small and slim with dark hair and big green eyes. She still gets mistaken for a student sometimes. Are you coming to our writing group at lunchtime? I couldn't stop thinking about her in the first year of college, like in a full-on lesbian way. I don't think I am a lesbian, though, only when I think about Isabel. I like watching lesbian porn, though. Older women with younger girls, and I imagine Isabel doing those things to me. I go off in my fantasies of me and Isabel all the time. I'll be washing up, and she'll come up behind me. She pulls me round to face her and kisses me, then tears off my clothes and ravishes me on the kitchen floor. The only problem with this fantasy is that when I wash up, I always wear rubber gloves. This is problematic, porn-wise, because I don't find marigold sexy. So, in the fantasy, I always have to figure out a way to get them off without interrupting the flow. Even in my head, I can't wash up with bare hands because I get dermatitis, which gives me really rough skin, and it will be on my mind the whole time that I was being seduced. I didn't read the last line because there's a child in the room.
None of this is based on my own life.
I've read an interview with you. I mean, a lot of the themes of the book really is sort of how tough it is to be young today, and that there are now challenges that there haven't been before. But I read an interview with you where you said in some ways you think it's kind of better today for young people. One of the things is a sort of wider acceptance, really, of LGBT issues. But what's your take on all this, and what's terrible now and what's better now?
Well, let me tell you what's wrong with the youth of today.
No, the LGBT thing I think is fascinating and so different to when I was at university in the 90s, where I remember being called a lipstick lesbian, and then there was all sorts of like it was a fuss, like it was a big deal if you came out, and I mean, of course it still is now, but amongst for example, the Billy Bragg song Sexuality, strong and warm and wild and free, safe sex doesn't mean no sex, it just means use your imagination. This was an anthem when I was at university. And I was talking about it to some American students, and they didn't get the relevance of the song because they live in a world where that prejudice doesn't exist the way it was for me. I know it does in the world, but not in their world. As 18-year-old students from American university, and I was like, oh, this was written about gay rights, and I'm like, oh, was it? That's nice. So I think, for example, if my children are, it's just, I think it's easier to be, I'm really careful what I say, because I know it's not for everybody, and it depends what family you come from. It depends on your religion and environment. But for the environment that I grew up in, and similar environments now, it seems, why wouldn't you say you're bisexual? And I've got a lot of young female friends. When I say friends, I mean babysitters. They don't bat an eyelash at stuff like that. What is really tough for young people now that didn't exist when I was growing up, obviously, was the internet. The worst someone could do to you was write, Shappi Khorsandi is a slag on the back of a toilet door. They couldn't go on Facebook and degrade you. They couldn't go on Twitter and degrade you. Instagram, there wasn't the judgment that there is on your looks publicly. I get internet trolling. I got someone write something nasty to me today, and it took up a whole 2 minutes of my time in the park. I think, oh my goodness, what would it be like if all the moments that I had when I was a teenager, trying to find my way in the world and making mistakes and drinking with people that I didn't know, and if someone had had a camera phone, and if someone had put that on the internet and people shared those images and laughed at me, what would that be like? How do you put one foot in front of another and go to school or college the next day? And friends of mine who are teachers and parents of 15-year-olds talk about that being a very real fear for them. That, I think, is something that I think about. And of course that becomes relevant to Nina without giving anything away. Camera phones and the internet, I worry about that for my own children as well.
And, it is tougher for girls, as it appears in the book. And I think one of the things that Nina has got to disentangle in a way is guilt and shame, sort of two different things. And she has to figure out what she needs to feel guilty about and what's being put on her.
Yeah.
In a way.
That shame is a massive theme of my book, and growing up and understanding that actually it's no one else's business to give you shame, and when it's so hard to see that. It was so hard for me to see that when I was younger, and to be able to disconnect now and go, no, you don't give me that. That's not for you to give me. And I just want to pick up on something you said. I think because I am a woman, and writing about a woman was perhaps more natural to me, and it is worse for her, I don't think it can be ignored that it can be pretty bad for guys, especially as I think that often we can assume that guys are coping when they're not, because the way our world works is still, unfortunately, boys don't cry. I do a joke in my routine about boys can't do what we do, which is run off into the toilets and cry, and if they do, their friends don't run in after them to reassure them that they're pretty. I just want to say that as well, that I am mindful that I'm writing about a woman's struggle, because it was something that came on naturally to me. And it's really awful, and the way some of her friends turn on her, and she's a slag, and those jealousies that can create. And so what you do when you're jealous is you tear someone down. Massively misplaced jealousy as well.
I have a trans friend who I met after she'd been to the hairdressers, and she came out and sort of danced down the street going, I love my hair, I love my hair, I love my hair. And after she'd calmed down, she said, can't do that as a bloke. So, though, you're right. There are things sort of both ways, aren't there?
Yeah.
I guess that's kind of for the audience to figure out where we are. They're always sort of pluses and minuses and goings, and Nina goes through an amazing journey, and she does in the end get a lot of support here and there, but you're really reading it and rooting for her. It's brilliantly constructed in that you get to a point where you have to sort of reassess what's gone before, which is a very clever bit of plotting. So how are you finding the novel writing now? Are you going to go on, write some more, or was this a story that you felt you had to tell?
Oh, I want to write more. Yeah.
You've got the bug now.
No, I always wanted to. I always, since I was a little girl, wanted to write books, wanted to write stories, and I am going to write another one. Let's see if they'll let me. Let's see how many of you buy the book. Okay, now let me do another one. I want to write another one with 4 narrators. The next one's got 4 narrators, and one of them is a guy, and one of them is 27, one is 40, and the other one's 20. So we're out of our teens now. I'm out of my teens now. The teens, because they're not about me. Not about me. Yes, I thought that would be quite an interesting thing to get into 4 people's heads.
And can you talk a little bit about what you do with the humanist organisation that you're involved in? I mean, how does this express itself in your other work?
Yeah, I'm the president of the British Humanist Association. I don't know if it does really, other than I was raised without a religion. I was raised by non-religious atheist parents, and sometimes I think when you're a non-believer, you're left out of moral and philosophical debate. But being an atheist doesn't mean that you are none of the above. It doesn't mean that you don't think very, very deeply and very much about philosophy and morals in the world. And so that's why I really enjoy being part of the British Humanist Association, because you just get to hang out with a lot of scientists. And they tell you really interesting stuff. I love a scientist. They tell you about their thing, and it's really interesting.
Well, it is a very moral book.
Is it?
It does, yeah. I mean, there's all like how you behave, why you behave the way you do, what you should do, what you shouldn't do, but without being kind of finger wagging.
See, I got a bit traumatised by. You see, this is why you should never Google and read your own reviews. But someone wrote a beautiful write-up of my book and said, and I bought it for my daughter as a cautionary tale. Oh, you've so not got my book. It's not a cautionary tale. I didn't mean it to be that way. And so, yeah, there we are. Is it? Yeah, there is a lot of moralising.
To go back to the YA, the young adult thing, about the only rule that we now have about what is a young adult book is simply that the narrator is teenage. Because it used to be, not so much sex, not so much swearing, and there's now tons of that as far as I can see in the market. So, I mean, it is something that I thought, and you sort of think, well, like the blowjob's on page 4 or something. It does sort of very quickly.
Very gruesome sex in it.
Yeah.
But it's not nice. It's gruesome, and it's... that was the other thing, because... I mean, perhaps this is a subject for another time, but because there's so much internet porn. I mean, like my generation sort of fumbled about in the dark, but Nina's generation, they see stuff that we used to have to rummage around in like bottom of your friend's dad's, not my dad's, my friend's dad's garage. To see, and it's just bam there, and here's a boob, and here's this, and here's that, and it's like that, where it was just a bit more, what's that then for us?
It's probably the best way.
Well, it can be more fun, I think. Anyway, so there is. So I was surprised again, because I wouldn't want anyone under the age of 16 to read it. So I don't know. Call it YA if you wish, but I will quietly seethe.
Well, let's see if there are any audience questions in the last sort of 10 minutes or so. Do we have a roving mic over there? We have a roving mic, fantastic. So are there any questions from the audience at this stage? Well, would you agree with that?
Purple.
And somebody who doesn't need a mic. Oh, right. It's always on the opposite side of the auditorium.
Oh, it's like Wimbledon.
Bonjour, Shappi.
Bonjour.
Thank you very much for the talk and whatnot. I've got a question. I've just turned 20, and I feel like the older I'm getting now, like the more I'm becoming aware of youth and like how important it can be. Like, do you still feel like you're becoming more and more aware of it, like the older you get?
How important youth is? Yes.
Well, not just important, like how weird it is and stuff like that.
How weird youth is. It's well weird. I like to revisit it. I like to try and see the world from those eyes again. It's because I think it's brilliantly bewildering and exciting time. And your 20s go on forever. Like acres and acres of 20, like they never ended. And then 30's gone. What the hell happened to that? And don't even talk to me about 40s. But the 20s just, they're such a time of adventure, and they can be so fraught with anxiety because you feel like whatever you build in your 20s, you'll be sort of living off in your 30s. If you see, it's a time where you feel like you've got to build, and that can be a really anxious time because you don't know if you're doing it right, you don't know if you're building the right thing, you don't know if you're making the right friends, going out with the right people, and that kind of thing. And I think there's a sneer. I don't like seeing a sneeriness towards young people because I think young people is always seen as somehow, oh, what you got to complain about. You know, look here, you know, you wake up in the morning and you look like you've slept even though you haven't, and you've got, I don't feel that we listen enough to young people. And so, and we can be very dismissive of younger people, and I see it in people my own age a lot, and I find that attitude really boring. So dull. Do you know what I don't like about young people? Can I just say to everyone here that's perhaps under 21, please, when you meet someone that's like over 35, don't be on your best behaviour. I have this really horrific thing where sometimes I meet young people and they're like, yes, miss, did I say the right thing? And it's like, oh no, don't be like that with me. Please don't be like that. Look, I'm wearing ripped jeans, please. I'm trying to connect. These are the worst things, by the way, to invest in if you are 5'2", because in order for ripped jeans to work, you need a bit of length. Otherwise, it just looks like you've snagged your trousers. There you go, little fashion tip for you. Try before you buy.
Another question? You're doing this on purpose, aren't you, just to make him run?
Sorry for the interruptions from Harold, but when I took him outside, I did buy the book. So.
Oh.
Nina isn't you, but how much did you draw on your own experiences? And if you did, how therapeutic was it?
It wasn't therapeutic at all, because I didn't need... I think, again, for me, with stand-up and writing, I've made the mistake with stand-up about talking about... really hurtful times when I'm still going through them. That was a bad mistake on Live at the Apollo. But there are elements of me in Nina, yes, certainly. I would be lying if I said there wasn't. Rather than being therapeutic, Nina was a chance for me, as 43-year-old me, to go and in a massively, perhaps, I don't know if therapeutic is the word, but allowed me to go and save someone. I feel that I wanted to rescue somebody, and for me, writing this meant that I've salvaged something from my own lost years. I always feel that I'll be honest with you, I lost my 20s to addiction. And for me, if you can create something creative out of something bad, then it hasn't been for nothing. So that's what this book meant to me, and I don't share that with everyone. I'll probably walk out of here and go, I can't believe I said that out loud.
What advice would you give your 18-year-old self?
Go to AA. You're not fat. I'd definitely tell her she's not fat. And I would tell her to join a running club.
Running club?
Yeah. My life changed when I started running at 31. I'd say join a running club, and everything will be okay. And I'd also say I'm not saying that because I think you're fat.
What advice would your 18-year-old self give you now?
It really doesn't matter if oh my God, what 18-year-old me would probably say, why have you managed to dye the roots of your hair ginger? Which is what I did the other day by accident. She'd probably say, what is with the ripped jeans? And she'd probably say, you should have had way better sex in your 20s. I think she'd probably say that. Yeah.
Okay. Do we have another?
Happy Sunday afternoon.
Maybe that's what all our 18-year-old selves would tell us, at least
Yeah.
the last bit. Probably, I'm imagining. So, right, we've got another question.
Comedy tends to be dominated by men. Do you think that this book, in a female voice, is an antidote?
Nah. Do you know, there is a lot, when you are, as a female comedian, I've never thought of myself as a female comedian. That sounds really weird. That tends to be a discussion that's had by people on the outside looking in. So awfully, I've never really delved too much into... I mean, I've noticed there are more men, but it's never been something that's... I've needed an antidote to, necessarily. Did I feel I could have a woman's voice? Oh, honestly, when I started comedy, I had so many neuroses going on. The fact that I was a woman was the least of my problems. It was just getting my legs, my nervous legs, to walk me onto the stage in the first place, and learning to understand. Because I was 23 when I started stand-up, and I found, you're performing to audiences of people in their 40s, and you think, oh my God, why are they going to be interested in anything I have to say? And comedy for me was much more learning about how to find, I call it manufacturing common ground, making people see the world as you see it, whether or not they had any of your life experiences or your gender or your social class or anything like that. And that to me is the journey of stand-up for me, connecting with any audience from any walk of life of any gender. And they were more important to me than my voice, if that makes sense. If it doesn't, I'll write you an email.
What was your worst heckle and how did you deal with it?
Oh, Because I'm a bit of a dipstick. Someone, when I went on stage once, someone said to me, "Oh, shake your shoes," and I didn't know what on earth they were talking about. And it wasn't until I came off, I was like going, "Why would I shake my?" I just didn't get it. And someone said, "Oh, it's because you're from Iran, and it's basically they're saying you're a terrorist." And I was like, "Oh, I didn't even get it." Apparently, the shoe bomber. It was something about a shoe bomber, and I got a really bad heckle, but it was way over my head. I just thought this person had a shoe fetish. I didn't really understand what was going on. So you can't really do much in circumstances like that, because if you went to find the heckler after you've been on stage, you are only ever a stalker. So I had to leave that, really. But yeah, as a female comic, yeah, once at the Comedy Store, I did get, "Oh, get your tits out," and then all you have to do is say, "Huh, put your brain in," and then you get everyone on side, and it's all fine. It's all fine, but yeah.
Talking of Iran,
Hello.
I grew up there, and I came here 10 years ago, and I remember I came here to study in this university. I remember watching How I Got News for You and thinking, the day that we have a program like that in Iran is the day we have democracy and we respect human rights.
Oh,
So,
I'm going to cry.
no, I mean it. And
Yeah.
But in your career, how have you sort of dealt with comedy in regards with dealing with difficult issues in this society?
Have I? Not consciously, but I think when you're a comic, whatever you're interested in, whatever takes up your thought process, whatever you read, seeps into what you do. And I'll be honest with you, when I had such an identity crisis for so many years, because I was one of the many that was exiled after the revolution. So massive difference between a political, a refugee and an economic migrant is refugees have that mentality of when we go back home. So I was always raised to go, well, when we go back to Iran. So you never felt that you could fully embrace the country that you were in. And then the situation in Iran didn't change. And I remember like getting to about 14 and thinking, I couldn't possibly go back to Iran, no way. And then that was a really strange sort of shift to make. And then I've got friends who are economic migrants whose parents are like, this is your country, and they've never had. So when I started doing stand-up, my identity crisis was a massive deal. I grew up in London, and suddenly I was performing to other parts of the country that weren't like London, and they would say bizarre things to me like, have you been circumcised? It was really odd. And those reactions were really suddenly like it was relevant. And so a lot of my comedy was coming from Iran and the assumptions that people made of me. And I sort of hung myself by a hook for ages because I couldn't really see a way out of that kind of box that I put myself in. And of course, then people are like, oh, here's the Iranian comedian. And that got really difficult to come out of for a while, and but I do like my current show is about it's called Oh My Country, and it's about how I can be English, like I'm not British, I'm English, which came about because I got so annoyed with the Proud to be English hashtag, and talking about patriotism isn't about thinking you're better than anyone else or thinking that you've got a divine right to a geographical space. So yes, I think is the answer is, but I also talk a lot about pornography.
Do you find people assume, because of your name, your background, that you must have a religious background?
Yes.
People immediately make assumptions about you.
Oh yes, you must get this. I don't know.
Well, I got this before I changed my name because it was Sheikh al-Islami.
Oh well, Sheikh al-Islami.
People kept saying Sheikh your salami. So,
We've got another stand-up in the house.
Please tell me you changed it to I shook my salami. What did you change it to? May.
To love whose month was ever May.
Oh, that's lovely. But yes, people always assume I'm Muslim, and they'll go, oh, should you be eating pork? And I used to do a joke about, oh, you drinking wine? It's like, it's fine, it's halal wine. Yeah, that was, and I had, recently, the Sunday Times in Edinburgh, at the Edinburgh Festival, they did this article called Miffed Muslims. and they had Muslim comedians who are about their shows, and they included me in that. And I was like, I'm the president of the British Humanist Association. What more can I do? It's like, well, it's purely about skin colour now. It's really bizarre. And I'm not even, you know, I'm ginger, for God's sake.
Ginger roots.
I've got ginger roots, yes. So,
Okay.
yes, a lot
I
of
think
assumptions.
we have to bring things to a close now because there is another event, I believe.
Yes.
But that's been incredibly entertaining. I certainly hope you go on and write more novels. So
Thank you.
everybody here, help Shappi write more novels by having a read of this one. I think it's absolutely excellent. See if you stay up all night and have a bit of a weep like I did.
Oh, I'm sorry about that.
Well done. It's an absolutely terrific read.
Thank
so
you.
Could everybody please thank Shappi for coming?
Thanks for coming.